All right, here's part 2 of lecture 10-1 on the drive-through. Hopefully you enjoyed that sandwich from the deli. We're on to example 4 here. Before we get into that, let's just talk about unit vectors. Okay? A unit vector is a vector whose magnitude is 1 unit. Okay? And the normalization of a vector is the process of making a vector 1 unit long. So the directions say to normalize or to find a unit vector in the direction of v if v is negative 2, 5. So we went left 2, up 5. This would be v. Okay. To normalize v, we need to know the magnitude of v. To find the magnitude of v, we just get our Pythagorean. So it's the square root of negative 2 squared plus 5 squared. Okay. So radical 29 equals the magnitude of v. So a unit vector in the direction of v we will call u, and you simply just take the original vector and divide it by the magnitude. Okay, for our class we can write it just like that. We don't need to rationalize, but we could obviously rationalize it pretty easily by calling it 2 radical 29 over 29, comma 5 radical 29 over 29. Okay? So, that's the normalization of a vector. Turning a vector whose moved in the direction left 2, up 5, and whose magnitude was radical 29, and we have made it into a unit vector. Okay. We can also write vectors into component form. We bring in these i's and j's. If you're wondering, soon we will be talking about k's, and that'll be in the z direction. Okay? So this is very simple. So we're going to say that u, first I'll just write it in vector form. So initial point, terminal point. So we do negative 1 minus 2. Remember, you always do your terminal minus your initial. That can get confusing. And then 3 minus a negative 5, so 3 plus 5. So in vector form, we would write u as negative 3, 8. Okay, in component form, we would write u as negative 3i plus, so 3 units to the left in the I direction, and then 8 units to the right, or sorry, vertical in the J direction. Okay, so this is just notation stuff you'll get used to. Just so you know, this and this are not the same thing. Here's what gets a little confusing from our book. They use u to describe any vector, like v, w, but they also use u, if you remember from the last screen, to divide or to name a unit vector, which is what we did right here. So that's confusing. Notation can be confusing, and I just wanted to point that out. Okay, we can use the unit circle and our trig functions to find a unit vector. So if we wanted to find a unit vector that's been rotated 30 degrees from the positive, right there, we just use our trig. So this green vector, u, could be written as cosine 30, comma sine 30. So just like you're used to, cosine represents the amount of I guess, movement, if you will, in the x direction. Sines always kind of represented the opposite, which is the vertical or the y direction. And so in this case, let's see, cosine, let's do a little math here. This is 1, 2, and radical 3. So cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2. Let's see, we want this to be 1/2, 1, and radical 3 over 2. Okay, so that's going to be radical 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. And just to kind of remind you, the magnitude of u is equal to, let's just see what that is, radical 3 over 2 squared. So we're just doing our Pythag again, plus 1/2 squared, and that's going to be 3/4 plus 1/4, which is 1. So we just, I guess, confirmed that that was indeed a unit vector. All right, find a vector whose magnitude is 3 and that has been rotated 150 degrees from the positive x-axis. To do this, let's find a unit vector first. So, okay, so we're going to use our reference angle. Sorry, this should be 150. All right, if you remember, this is how I would do this if I was a pre-calc teacher. I would call this 1/2, 1, and negative radical 3 over 2, using my 30, 60, 90 triangles. And so we would say that the unit vector in this case would be the cosine, so negative radical 3 over 2, comma the sine, 1/2. This is exactly what we just did above. So we just made a unit vector, okay? So if we wanted its magnitude to be 3, okay, so 3u is simply 3 times u, so it's negative 3 radical 3 over 2, comma 3/2. Or we could write that in component form by writing it as negative 3 radical 3 over 2I plus 3/2 j. That concludes the drive-through confessional for 10.1. Hope you enjoyed it. Go to work. Boom!